Hey cats, it's your Midsole man, Eddbud here. I'm back with a new shoe review for you. It's in fact from a new brand. They're from Greece. This is the ENA PROTO RUNNER 1. We got a carbon plate here, we got dual density foams, and some serious rubber underfoot. How does the new kid on the block shape up against some of the typical contenders in this field? Let's find out. Thanks for joining me on the channel, people. It is always appreciated. Do hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up like. Drop us a comment as well to help with the algorithm. Danke schön. ENA have sent over this shoe for review, which is always kind, though they're not vetting my views before my valued viewers get to see them. So, you know, it's an honest one from me always. I've got about 305 grams here in my UK 11, US 12. So it's around about 10.8 ounces if you like that sort of thing. The brand mentioned that this is for training and racing, though for me, after my testing, I think it's probably more of a trainer for me, very much at tempo speeds, a little bit heavier than perhaps some of the other contenders out there. But I'd suggest you might want to use it at a marathon where endurance and ability are more being tested than the shoe, right? I've got about 42 millimeters of heel stack and about 35 millimeters up front, so making for about a 7 mil drop. The company themselves suggest it's an 8 mil drop, but then again, their measurements are very different. They've got 33 in the heel, 25 up front. I think that must be like the women's sample size or something, because I've got way more than that in the heel. In terms of surface area, underfoot is about 11.8 centimeters up front, and then you've got about 9 centimeters in the heel. So not the widest back here in the heel, a little bit more like a Adidas style setup where they're always a little wider up front and a bit less back here in the rear of the shoe. Okay, we're going to start with the upper first. Really like the knitted fabric material here that ENA have used on the Proto Runner 1. It's nice and conforming, still reasonably breathable. Actually, when you get the shoe in hand and you start sort of feeling that material, it's not anywhere near as sort of mesh-like as it appears in the photos. It's actually quite soft, really nice, comfortable material. The lacing works really well to cinch the two sides of the shoe around your foot and get a really spot-on lockdown. And the laces do a bit of that as well. They're slightly serrated. They don't sort of slip through the holes here, the eyelets. So it's really simple to get a great lockdown around your foot. Very consistent as well. I do like the really cool padding design that ENA have used here on the Proto Runner 1. Across the tongue, it's really fantastic, just alleviates any real pressure here on top of the foot. Though the booty construction of the shoe does mean perhaps if you're running in very hot conditions that it might be a little bit warmer than some of the other contenders out there. I'm thinking of things like the Zoomfly 6 or perhaps the Endorphin Speed 4. I think the materials here that have been used in the upper, although are very comfortable, have perhaps contributed to the slightly heavier weight of the shoe. There's some great padding around the heel area here, inspired perhaps by something like the Vaporfly Next% 2, and a very rigid heel counter. There's none of this flexible stuff going on. You do have a pull tab back here, which is plasticky in nature, though I would suggest that you always untie and retie your shoes when you're going to begin using them again. It just gets a better lockdown every time. There's some extra reinforcement around the front toe box here and the eyelet chain, and some extra eyelets on the medial side, though I've not found any real reason to use them yet. They are there perhaps if you've got a slightly wider foot. There's a few reflective elements here too, perhaps if you're running in the winter or very early in the morning. Fits my foot really well, and I think a range of runners' feet will be able to get something out of this one. Just feels a little bit too substantial in terms of the upper to be a racer for me. I'm going to give it a 2.7 out of 3 for the upper so far. Midsole, midsole, midsole now. The foam apparently here is 2 different densities, though I've not been able to find exactly where those 2 different densities have been utilised. I got a Shore A Durometer softness score of about 30 across the foam in various different places, which is pretty much what you got on the original version of Lightstrike Pro. Now, I'm not talking about the one that you've got in the Adios Pro 4. That is one of the softest foams known to man or beast. Poor old beast. So a slightly denser feel here in the Proto Runner 1 midsole than some of the new-fangled super shoe foams. So don't expect mega squash here. There is a sort of trampoline-like bounce and resilience here to the foam, rubbery in texture, and it certainly puts the shoe into more of a trainer-like feel for me. It's not something I'd reach for like a 5 or 10k, certainly something for half marathon or marathon effort really. Ride-wise, I'm getting hints of the Zoomfly 6 and the Tempo Next Percent, I suppose. Great at that tempo speed for me, and bizarrely, you don't really even notice this huge bit of midsole that's been cut out here. Your foot's actually kind of resting atop of the upper and part of the plate. Perhaps something close to the Puma Fast R Nitro Elite, the original version. Very smooth in the transition. I'd suggest the heel area in the shoe is a little bit more forgiving though than the Puma one. Certainly wider, and you've got that kind of bucket seat type feel in the midsole. The midsole here is surprisingly stable underfoot. It really is nice and smooth. You've got a little bit of torsional resistance due to that plate that's incorporated into the midsole. It does smooth out the landing as well. It really is quite a nice buttery kind of feel. Though I do think that for me at least, this shoe works much better at faster paces than slower ones. That's not to say it's completely unusable at sort of like recovery or easy pace, but it's just not really my, first selection. 7 minutes 30 per mile, marathon target pace, and this one starts to sing. It just felt much more natural then. So I feel those after a slightly more stable sort of super trainer might get something out of the Proto Runner 1. It's not a stability shoe per se, but I do get CeeLo X1 vibes here from the Proto Runner 1. Similar shoe all round really, perhaps with a slightly more traditional upper here in the ENA shoe. I like the trampoline-like feel to the midsole, and I think that comes a little bit from these cutouts in the heel and in the forefoot area, though it just felt a touch heavy to me on some longer sessions. I mean, okay for sort of medium length sessions, but when you're going a little bit further, it felt a little hard at the end there to keep the cadence up nice and quick. So a good functional midsole here from the first effort from ENA, though perhaps lacking a bit of that pizzazz that we've got from some of those recent super shoe formulas. I'll give it a 2.7 out of 3 for the midsole after my initial runs. Outsole wise, the grip is really good here on the Proto Runner 1. You've got some very small ridges here in the rubber. Don't feel quite as deep as you think they are, but they get very quickly clogged up with dirt and debris, sadly. They can be easily liberated with a sort of harder bristle brush. The heel cutout's quite large, and you're going to get a very specific rock stuck in there at some point, so avoid the gravel, and the same can be said about the oddly shaped cutout here in the forefoot. It does reveal quite a lot of the carbon plate here, which does appear to have some sort of extra layer on it, almost sort of plasticky really, and it appears to be reasonably high up in terms of the placement towards the foot rather than towards the outsole. The outsole rubber isn't actually as thick as it first appears, and it's very, very soft in reality. I did test it in terms of the durometer score, and I got about 55, which is actually lower than some foams I've tested over the years. So it's quite a soft rubber formula here in the Proto Runner 1. It's flexible enough, and I do like the mottled nature of the rubber itself. Provides some good traction on nearly all surfaces, aside from perhaps very smooth, wet concrete and sort of stone or marble, but the rubber's sticky enough to work in almost all other places. I mean, most shoes don't really work on those very smooth surfaces anyway, so we can't really beat the Proto Runner 1 up too much in terms of this aspect. You probably don't get too much wet sort of weather in Greece anyway. I can't imagine it's that wet over there. Over in England at the moment, everywhere is basically like a river. When will the rain ever end? So very impressed so far. Just got to do a bit of maintenance here to keep the ridges free of too much debris. I'll give it a 2.8 out of 3 for the outsole so far. Value now, and this is really the only fly in the ointment. The Proto Runner 1 comes in at €230, and I guess that's about 190 quid if you do the sort of rough comparison, which is quite high really. I mean, the Zoomfly 6, which has got a carbon plate, nice high stack, and a slightly lower weight, makes the Proto Runner a bit of a hard sell. I mean, that shoe's about 165 quid, right? Durability though, in terms of the foam, I think will hold up, and the rubber feels pretty good so far. I think it's going to be quite a a resilient shoe and more of a trainer really than a racer. The quality of the shoe out of the box is high, the fit is good. It's quite a nice looking shoe as well. They've kept it quite simple, I suppose. But yeah, coming in 25 to 30 quid, more expensive than the Nike shoe, and we know how Nike can do that because they're like mass producing stuff, right? And about a tenner more than the Endorphin Speed 4, which all the time just doesn't feel perhaps as innovative, I suppose, as it was when it first released. I mean, you can pick the Super Blast 2 up for a tenner more, so that puts it into perspective. Yes, I'm going on the Euro price tag, which is never the best indicator. You never really know. You know, once a shoe gets over to the UK, sometimes it can be way more expensive, sometimes cheaper. But I think it's a great bet if you're after a more stable kind of higher pace trainer. Just feels slightly too niche for me to give it an out and out recommendation to everybody so far. So harder to give this one a slightly higher value score. That price tag just making it a slightly harder sell over some of the other competitors. I suppose you could say it's one for the enthusiasts, and I know you're an enthusiast. I'll give it a 2.5 out of 3 for value after my initial runs. Okay, if I'll total the scores up correctly for the ENA Proto Runner 1, that gives us 10.7 out of 12. So just wish they could lower the weight on this one a little bit, just make it slightly more competitive in terms of the pricing too. Other than that, I think they've got a pretty good shoe on their hands here if you want something for that faster tempo work. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one down in the comments. Musical interlude time. You're either going to love this one or really not like it at all. Check out the new album from the Lambrini Girls. Last time I featured this on the musical interlude, people got very upset. Well, you know, a couple of people. Most people were like, yeah, fair enough, you know, it's not my cup of tea, but some people didn't like it very much. So if you don't, you know, don't listen to it. You're Not From Around Here is a particularly great track, which is explaining about people that might go somewhere and then feel rather unwelcome, I suppose, by the locals. I think everybody's kind of felt that a little bit. But I think if you're part of certain communities, you might feel that even more in certain places. But, you know, let's remember that that's very much the people who are causing a problem and not yours. I like the Lambrini Girls. There's a lot of aggression there. It's great running music, in fact, if you want to sort of get rid of your pent-up frustrations. You can put this on, there's some loud grinding riffs, and you know, that's what you want from guitar music, right? You don't want twiddly this, that and the other and someone doing a guitar solo for 5 years. You know, it's just boring, right? Go and check it out, the new album from the Lambrini Girls. It's a really great one. It's noisy, and that's what I like right now. Thanks for tuning in, people. Hope you enjoyed today's review. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up like. Also, drop us a comment to help with the algorithm. My name's Eddbud, and I'll be seeing you